Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome here to Canada in North America, and welcome to the commentary box today with myself and Sam. Hello, Sam.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another week of Kenco F1 League Racing. We're obviously in Canada this week, one of my personal favourite tracks, so I think it's going to be a good qualifying, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be seeing some very fast times today.
Yeah, I think likewise as well. It's one of my favourite tracks, obviously. Some of the best races in Formula 1 history has happened here, notably back in 2011 when we did see that full wet race. And today we're in a wet quali and presumably, according to the weather forecast, a dry race. So how do you think that will pan out for today, Sam?
Obviously, with it being a wet quali, it's going to throw some things into the mix. Obviously, it depends whether the drivers have been practicing in the wet at all. Obviously, usually you'll be practicing in the dry just because you'll be the fastest and you have the most grip, etc. But we'll have to see whether the conditions today catch anyone off guard or it will play into some people's advantage. We'll have to see.
We already have quite a few cars out on track, and definitely some of the most notable names, the likes of Robbie Walsh, who's just come out of the pit box there. We've also got both of the McLarens who have struggled to get out of qualifying. Struggled to get out of qualifying one, the first. For the last couple of weeks. So, be interesting to see really what they are doing. But we're on board with the man who won in Monaco and the man who came second last week. Big shock that Dylan Hartley has been on the podium 2 weeks running.
Yeah, obviously a great run of races for Dylan Hartley. That confidence coming into this weekend is going to be sky high. So we'll have to see what he can do, obviously, in these wet conditions. We haven't seen those for a little while. So we'll have to see what he can do in the wet. It'll be really impressive if we can see a similar performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's the likes of the Alpha Tauris and the Alfa Romeos are really catching everybody off guard today, or not today, but this league. And Dylan Hartley is one of the people who hasn't done quite well at the start, but has sort of begun to shine.
Yeah, definitely. He's definitely developed as the league's gone on, which is really, really good to see. And I'm really happy to see a driver like Dylan getting those podiums, and obviously that incredible win in Monaco. It's a really nice thing to see. Obviously, you don't want the same guy winning all the time. Obviously, the likes of Max Chapman, Casper Meech, that the Alfa Romeo boys are very, very strong and very hard to get. But it's really good to see the likes of Dylan Hartley get up there.
Yeah, and we see them come around turn 10, and it's really interesting because it's almost a flat back straight, isn't it? I mean, you've got from turn 10 down to turn 2. There's only well, let's have a look. There's only wall of champions in the first turn, really, to navigate between being at one end of the track and the other end of the track. So very straight down the back.
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously a very short track, much, much shorter than that of Baku. Obviously, another street circuit. We had a run of three now. We had Monaco, Baku, and obviously now Canada, this Gilles Villeneuve circuit. A great circuit it is too. And yeah, as you said, that great back straight for some great overtaking, hopefully.
Yeah, we've got a train of 3 cars here. It's not what you want, ideally, here into turn 3, but maybe one of the Alpha Tauris trying to get the toe off the other Jay Robinson, close behind his teammate. That just going through turn 4 and 5, we see just how close those cars get to the wall.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we've seen that turn three has caused so many interesting accidents in the past. The one that comes to mind is obviously that 2019 incident between Vettel and Hamilton that eventually cost Vettel that win. So that obviously won't be costing any wins in qualifying, but it could definitely be costing some lap times.
That's really interesting. I don't know what's gone on there with Casper Knopp there, going 1.3 seconds slower than Adam Forbes. Maybe we saw in Australia Adam Forbes up in P3 for a majority of that race. So do the wet conditions suit that McLaren car?
Potentially, obviously, it depends what sort of setup these guys have decided to run this weekend. If Adam Forbes has decided to run a bit more downforce on his McLaren, then that's obviously going to be paying dividends in the wet. But obviously, we are expecting a dry race according to our weather radars at the circuit. So I have to see whether that pays off in the long run, because obviously, as you said, that very long straight coming up towards the Wall of Champions, that will not be good if you have lots of downforce on.
Now, I think the conditions are set to get a little bit drier towards the end of qualifying session, but if you look at the likes of Hartley and Chapman, are still setting 120s, which is about 10 seconds slower than you'd be expecting in dry conditions.
Yeah, definitely. There's not loads of rain on the track at the moment. It's still pretty dry. Still a bit too wet for those dry tyres. So you obviously see a bit of drizzle coming down still at the moment. So we'll have to see what happens throughout the session, whether it dries out. It does look like it could dry out, and we'll go on to those dry tyres and expect those rapid tyres from the likes of Max Chapman.
How can the drivers push the track limits today? Obviously, with it being on strict, it's quite tight, especially in the wet conditions. But there's certain corners where there's a little bit of leniency. So where do you expect the drivers to push the track limits today?
Well, obviously, with as you said, the track limits being on strict, it's going to be a challenge for some drivers. Obviously, some drivers do like to be very aggressive on the curbs, and the game does not appreciate that, and it will give you an invalidated lap time. So yeah, these drivers are going to have to really adapt their driving style, not go too aggressive. Especially the final 2 corners, I think, is where you can really gain a lot of time by going over the curbs, but the game really does not appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're on board with the man who's just put himself into P2 and is gaining. He's gone 4 tenths quicker, so he would be currently P1 if he keeps this lap up. It's not fastest Sector 1, but he's 4 tenths quicker than he was, so that's really promising there for the racing point of Joel Foxall.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen time and time again, obviously, Joe Foxall just getting up there. And obviously, in Monaco, we saw him with that P2 just behind Dylan Hartley. That race, he could have won that race. It was so close between the whole field. It was so close for Joel Foxall winning that race in Monaco. But obviously, it wasn't meant to be. That was Dylan Hartley's day. But yeah, as you said, he gained a lot of time on his second run, which is really good. news for him. Maybe might be able to propel himself forward ahead of Max Chapman.
Wow, he would have done, but Chapman's just said an even faster lap. Back up in 119 territory now, but Joel Foxall probably would have got that if it wasn't for his middle sector, which has put him slower. He was about 4 tenths quicker. Coming down that back straight, we saw that he was about 3 tenths quicker, and coming towards the finish line, we'll see that his overall lap is about 2 tenths slower than Chapman, so you're right, that if he was quicker in that middle sector, then he probably would have got it.
Yeah, still very, very close between the two. It's good to see Joel Foxall P2 at the moment, just 2 tenths behind. Obviously, a really good start from Max Chapman, as we've seen time and time again with that Alfa Romeo driver up in P1. Got that 2 tenths advantage ahead of him. But obviously, the likes of Casper Knopp and Casper Meach haven't been able to set a good time as of yet. I think Casper Knopp's time was invalidated. So we'll have to see what those drivers can do, because they've been very impressive in qualifying before.
Well, there's a lot of a backing up here in middle sector with about 6 drivers trying to straddle the track to let the cars through, but there is a lot of paddock talk today that there may be some driver transfers coming on. I mean, obviously, those who were involved have signed agreements, and we don't know about that yet, but there is some driver transfer news, and how would that shake up the grid, especially with the likes of, it could be one of the most experienced or most influential people, or it could just be someone down at the bottom of the grid.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, those rumours always circulate the paddock in real life Formula 1, and obviously in the league as well. So yeah, it'll obviously be very interesting. Obviously, the drivers, it makes them more on edge. They're going to be wanting to impress their teams. They want to secure their seats, and if they're not really impressing, and the teams can see a new promising driver, then why would they not go for it? So we'll have to see what happens on that front.
And with terms of the racing points, I mean, Joel Foxall is in P4, but Dylan Hartley, like we said, is coming up behind him quicker than ever.
Yeah, again, Dylan Hartley impressing us with his just real good, solid performance, which is good to see as he rounds turn 10, going on to this straight that we talked about earlier, which is, I do think, is where we're going to see lots of overtaking this weekend. Obviously, they're going to have that DRS and that slipstream if they are within 1 second of the car ahead. And looks like Dylan Hartley's getting a lovely tow by the looks of it off in Alfa Romeo as he approaches the final corner. The Alfa Romeo's gone in, but yeah, I'll have to see what time this is for Dylan Hartley.
Yeah, and for Dylan Hartley, we'll go ahead and talk him through his fastest lap. So just coming down to turn 1, really hard on the brakes, about 4 Gs of forward deceleration, and they're coming around the corner really slow in the wet conditions, so greasy. So you put the power down, you lose your rear, and we've already seen that with one of the McLarens doing so in Sector 3. Dylan Hartley taking it gingerly there through turns 3 and 4, and down towards the tight hairpin of turn 6, we do see him go 2 tenths slower than Chapman, which would put him in P2 currently, but coming through the middle sector, Dylan Hartley gets on that power. You see the throttle meter on the left-hand side, just gingerly putting it on, obviously full brakes all the time on that thing, but we'll see him coming here through turn 8 and 9. Just see how little throttle he puts on there. The control from that driver is amazing, as by 10 thousandths of a second, Andre Abreu goes into P1, and down into the 10th turn, Dylan is 4 tenths slower now, but that is absolutely amazing lap from Abreu, because he's going to put himself ahead by quite some margin. And down the back straight, we said the drivers will be able to unleash all of the power, so getting through 280, 290, 300 kilometers an hour down that back straight.
Yeah, that's really impressive stuff, considering we are in the wets as well. The wet conditions as well. See, that traction is not going to be as good as he approaches the wall of champions. Get very, very close, but as he approaches the line, what's it going to be for Hartley? Yeah, very nice. Propelled himself to a P5 with a 120.2.
Hey, P5 is not bad, especially here in the dry conditions. Anything can happen in that turn 1, and realistically, you want to be on the right-hand side of the grid.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, during Hartley's lap, Andre Abreu in that Williams has propelled himself to P1. I can't quite remember the exact race, but I do recall in the wet, Andre Abreu impressing us and also surprising us with his qualifying pace. So obviously in P1, that's good to see. And there's going to be a challenge between him and those around him, probably.
Yeah, and someone we really haven't seen, we talked about driver transfers, and one of them was Alex Hughes, who left to go to another motorsport, and here, taking his place, Matthew Widdowson down in P11, getting some nice drifts there through turn 2.
Yeah, obviously impressed.
Oh, he's lost his rear, into turn 5. He's gone into the wall, but his internet was just a little bit laggy there, so he couldn't quite see what was going on, but that was almost the end of Matthew Widdowson.
Yeah, I was just about to say impressing the cameras, but that wasn't very impressive. Obviously, nearly binned it into the wall, but just made it out. And yeah, you don't want to be doing that um, on a set of intermediates. You know, that is exactly what will happen. You'll just spin. The rear tires will get extremely warm, and you'll just spin. Demonstrated very well by the Haas driver.
And we talk about commentators' curse, don't we? Where
Yeah,
if you're bigging someone up or you're about to say something good about someone, they'll go ahead and prove you otherwise. So it's a little bit humiliating as a commentator when you go to someone and immediately they spin. But Matthew Widdowson, I'm sure, can get back out. He's already in P12, and remember today, because there's 3 people not participating, there are only 2 elimination positions. So I'm sure he will be fine.
yeah, definitely. He'll just come in, get a new set. There's about 4 minutes left in the session. It's just over 4 minutes. He'll come in to the box, get a new set of intermediates, no doubt, and hopefully set a faster lap. I don't know if P12 is enough at the moment.
For a dry race, what is the strategy around here?
That is a great question, to be honest. At Canada, the tyre wear is nowhere near as bad as the likes of Baku. So it really depends on what your setup's like. To be honest with you, if if it's a very aggressive setup, not much downforce, prioritizing that straight line speed, probably get away with going on the soft tires. Obviously, less downforce is less pain on the tires. So it all depends on your setup. I think it's possible to start on the softs, but I think the drivers in the league really like to start on that harder medium tire, just so they have a few more laps at the start of their first stint, just to get secure, and then they'll probably go onto either the soft tires or the hards.
Well, last week we saw those running the softer compound of tyres really struggle with Archie Middlefeld, the man currently in P10. He actually got a puncture on the line, which meant he went down to about... he lost about 3 positions just because of that puncture on the final straight. So, I mean, we talk about tyre wear now. Obviously, we're not able to enforce parc fermé as we normally would, and the tyre wear is back to nil effectively for the race. So you eat your heart out on the softs on the Saturday, or for our case on the Friday. But with the inters, I mean, obviously that doesn't really affect it now. But how would that affect the strategy? Because we now know what a we know what a wet race could be, and
Yeah.
if it does turn out to rain, some of these drivers may be trying some sort of like wear. So I don't know how to put it, but you know what I mean, where they're trying to do sort of tests to see how long the intermediate tyres last in the wet conditions.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't had many wet sessions. Obviously, well, actually, saying that, we've had quite a few. We have had quite a few wet runs actually in the league, which is quite surprising. The game, obviously, the weather setting is on dynamic, so it's completely up to chance what the weather conditions are. And it does like to give rain in quite a lot of track. So they've had a lot of wet weather running, but not specifically at Canada, as you said. So yeah, as you said, they could be using this time just to have a feel about what these intermediates are all about around Canada, and just see how much wear comes up on their data screens, going out for a few laps in qualifying. Obviously, these qualifying runs are much more aggressive than an average race run, because you're just trying to get as much time out of them as possible. So yeah, it's a good time for them to test the intermediate tyres if there were to be any rain in the race.
Oh, he's just gone a little bit quicker, Jay Robinson has, and do you think that's safe? P15 is right on the cusp.
It is very, very tight between those final 3. Obviously, P15 is safe, but very, very risky. Obviously, Josh Mera in P16 and Ben Mitchell in P17. They're just about 3/10 behind Jay Robinson. So that's very, very tight. Obviously, Mera's on another run just try and get into Q2 for, I believe this would be his 3rd time. He's going to be desperate to get into Q2 today.
Well, he's just invalidated his lap. He's tried to cut the turn 3 and 4 chicane a little bit too much, and he's going to be racing back to the line. There's 1 minute and 11 seconds left in the qualifying, and he's got to get back to that line as soon as he can. 50 seconds now to get onto that line and start his second run. He is going to be booking it down that back straight.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to be very, very close. But it looks like Jay Robinson's actually been pushed out of Q2 at the moment. He's probably going to try and go for another run if possible. He's got about 30 seconds to get to the line. He's going very, very slowly at the moment. to have to see whether he has enough time. But at the moment, as it stands, Adam Forbes has hit Jay Robinson, and Ben Mitchell has managed to get himself out of the Q1 elimination zone as well.
Josh
And
Amara,
Josh Rivera
yeah,
has approached the line in time.
he has made it. I mean, you see the speed of these cars in the wet. Even 1 minute and 11 seconds from the middle of Sector 1 is enough. And welcome to all of you who are joining us from home. And I hope that you're all staying safe and enjoying the content that we're providing for you. Caspinall easily into P6. And yeah, Forbes is going to be defending that place from Robinson in P16.
Yeah, it's going to be close. And obviously, as you said, Josh O'Mara in P17, it's going to be so, so close to see whether he can get into Q2. He's going to want it so, so badly. Oh, no, he spun.
Oh no, Josh. Oh,
No, that's
that
a
is...
shame.
Well, I mean, at least the McLaren are going to have one person into Q2. That's going to be the first time in a while.
Yeah, it is. That's a real shame for Omar. He was so close. He actually had a fastest first sector, as you can see on the graphic. Out of his first sectors so far, so he could have potentially got into Q2 today. That is such a shame for him. Small little mistake has cost that potential for him today. So he'll be starting P17 today, as it stands.
We also see one on the Mercedes there. It's Hanmore, who has spun coming out of turn 10, and his brakes and his tyres will be a little bit toasty too.
Yeah, definitely. And in that spin, you're pretty helpless, to be honest. And yeah, as you said, temperatures of the tyres, the brakes, they're going to be increasing rapidly as you slam on the brakes to avoid hitting the wall.
Do you think they're going to be aquaplaning? I don't know. I don't know if there's enough standing water on the track. Obviously, back in 2011, I will keep referencing to it, but we saw that quite a few times with the drivers complaining about the aquaplaning on the tyres. So is that possibly what was happening, and the reason why? Is that possibly the reason why Josh O'Mara and Ian Hammore has spun?
Yeah, that could be the case. Obviously, there's not much standing water at the moment, as you said, but it looks like the weather has actually worsened slightly throughout the Q1 session. So there could be more standing water than there was previously, and we just can't quite see it from the commentary box. So yeah, aquaplaning is a real issue for these drivers, and they don't want to be aquaplaning coming in towards the braking zone because I mean that's game over. They're going to be helpless and sliding all the way into the braking zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a competitive sport here, Formula One, and especially when the conditions just aren't against you. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and we'll see you in qualifying 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to qualifying 2 session here at the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, and once again joined by Sam in the commentary box. We see a few cars already leaving the pit lane, and talking of the pit lane, I don't know what year, I think it was 2012 or 2013, I can't quite remember, but one year there was a bit of a commotion here in the pit lane where where Lewis Hamilton failed to see. Actually, I think it was earlier than 2012. It was probably like 2009, because Nico Rosberg was in a Williams, so yeah, about 2009. But the pit lane light was on red, and they failed to see it, and they went straight into the back of where Dylan Hartley is going. You see the pit lane light turn green, so this time Dylan is allowed through. Yeah, and only 10 cars can get through to the qualifying 1 session here in qualifying 2. So all of those cars in the moderately wet conditions still pushing their absolute hardest to get through. Currently there is about there's about a 30-second gap separating P1 and P2 physically, so that must be quite advantageous. And P1 is just coming here through Sector 2, and his name is Dylan Hartley, and he's on his outlap. So here, you see the track limits there, just so tight, and you've got to give it to him, because, oh, you've got to give it to all of the drivers, actually, because they are just so skilled to keep it within the 2 wetlands.
Yeah, definitely. In the wet, just getting in within the 2 white lines, as I said, is just such a challenge. You don't really see that in the dry. It's much easier. The tires stick to the road much better. But in the wet, there's that added layer of danger with the rain coming in between the track and the tires. So yeah, as you said, it's very, very tricky and very easy to spin, as we've seen. Obviously, the McLaren of Josh O'Mara, which is a real shame. I do feel for him. He could have got into Q2 today, I feel.
There's only one car that isn't actually out on track currently, so that's a real surprise. Everybody out within the first minute of this session.
Yeah, they're all very, very keen. Clearly, they want to get the best of the conditions. Maybe they know something about the weather we don't. Potentially during this Q2 session, we can expect some heavier rain, in which obviously could potentially lead to them coming onto the wet tyres, which are obviously much, much slower than these intermediate tyres. So they're going to want to have the best conditions possible.
And the first of the people on hot laps are starting to set their times. So Adam Forbes is one of the first out the garage. He comes through the wall of champions. Oh, loses his rear a little bit, but he manages to catch it and will put himself safely in P2. And who's that in the back? That is Joel Foxall coming through wall of champions, our first victim.
Yeah, that was I'm not too sure if he has any damage. I didn't actually see the
Yeah,
incident.
his right end plate went, bashed it into the wall.
Yeah, that's a real shame. But yeah, Forbes was so he did very well to catch that massive snap of Osteer coming out of the Wall of Champions. But unfortunately for Joel Foxall, here's our first victim. Obviously, the Wall of Champions named that because of the amount of incredibly talented drivers that do hit it. So yeah, Joel Foxall, it's not a great start for his Q2, but he'll come in, replace that front wing, no doubt, and get another lap going.
If we go to the midfield, Joel Fossell currently in 7th, but that won't stay because he'll have to come in. Thomas Solomon, the next man to set a lap. He comes here through the back straight. He is joined quickly by Rinser, who is behind him very tightly. He's got 2 green sectors, obviously, because it's his first lap, but he's going to be slower than Meech, and he puts himself into 4th place.
Yeah, and Dylan Hartley into P4. We were talking about him earlier. One of the first guys at our chat. Dylan Hartley P4 120 flat, which is a good time for him. And obviously Rinser behind the guy we're spectating now, Thomas Salomon, got into wasn't P3, he's down P4. So obviously that toe paying dividends towards him.
Yeah, so no free tyre choice, or, well, no free tyre choice to think about, should I say, because all of these drivers on the intermediate tyre still. So how's that going to affect strategy? Because that means, theoretically, they can pick hards if they need it.
Yeah, they can pick whatever tyre they want to start on now. Obviously, in Formula 1, the top 10 drivers on the grid have to start the race on the tyre they qualified on Q2. So that rule does not come into effect if it rains, and it's obviously raining right now. They're running on those intermediate tyres, so they won't be expected to start on that mandatory compound. But yeah, obviously it opens out the strategy quite a
use it in qualifying before. So, yeah, so how is that going to affect the people? Are they going to be trying to avoid it? Obviously, we've seen in the past, what's it called? We've seen Vettel, I believe it is, into turn 1, trying to avoid a pigeon, I think it was, on the track, or a seagull, or some sort of thing. So I mean, any debris on the track, is that going to put the drivers off?
Yeah, definitely. They're not going to be wanting to hit that debris. Obviously, we've seen quite a few punctures before in the league, and I mean, the easiest way to get a puncture is to run over that debris. So they're going to want to avoid that as much as possible. And if they see that in their ice, in their view, their if they
Peripheral
see
vision.
that, yeah, and if they see that in peripheral vision, then that's going to really distract them. So they're going to want to avoid that debris.
Yeah, and Abreu, 2 laps running, failing to set a valid lap. So we were talking about how tricky the track limits are around here, and there are 3 drivers still yet to set a lap: P13, P14, and P16. Foxhall, who obviously damaged his wing portion, so couldn't continue. Widdowson, who just hasn't had a set time, and Abreu, who hasn't managed to set a lap for 2 laps running, and his last lap was a 1:21.1. Sorry, a 1:21.8, although it invalidated, so that would still put him very much in the midfield.
Yeah, obviously not as an impressive time as we saw in Q1. Obviously, Andre Abreu did top that session. I believe he was still top at the end of the session. So yeah, obviously he's had 2 invalidated laps, but it looks like he's had fastest. No, he hasn't had fastest sector 1. Don't know why that's happened there, but he's obviously improved in his sector 1, which is good to see. So we'll have to see whether the end of his lap is as good as the start.
Yeah, and coming here through the place he invalidated it last lap, through the turn 8 and 9 complex, coming up towards the very tricky breaking point of turn 10, he looks like he is good. So the only place he could invalidate it now is through the trickiest corner on the track, which is definitely turn 13 and 14.
Yeah, definitely. As we said earlier, going over those curbs at turn 13, 14, just too much will invalidate your lap time. The game really does not like you doing that. You can gain a lot of time going through there. You can almost straight line the corner. And he got very, very close there on that first corner. He got very close to the Wall of Champions as well as he powers towards the line. He goes P2 with a 1:19.5, just 1/10 behind Casper.
Yeah, 1:19.595. Obviously, not as important there, but he's having to use the runoff, so maybe he missed his braking point there into turn 1. That could have been a detriment to his next lap if he was looking to set 2 consecutive laps. It's not something we see often in Formula 1, but if we look at the steering wheel, there was more than enough energy deployment to do so. So, yeah, I think maybe he had to come out in order to get out of the way of the drivers, or yeah, if he did miss his breaking point, that runoff was certainly there for him to use.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, just trying to get out the way of the guys behind him. There was that fast Ferrari coming through, so you don't want to be affecting any lap times because you will be incurring penalties from the stewards. And he doesn't want to be doing that. He's looking very strong in P2 at the moment. So it's good to see a new protagonist in this pole fight. Obviously, Max Chapman has been so strong when it comes to that pole fight, but he's in P4 at the moment, coming out to set another lap by the looks of it. Looking pretty strong, but not as strong as we've seen him so far.
Another person who's coming out, we see just peeping there into the Ferrari garage. They're getting all of the stuff clear. The tyre blankets are off, and he's coming out into the pit lane. Charlie Torben Schutt, and he is in the pit lane, ready to go for his, I believe, 5th lap of the session.
Yeah, he's obviously going for another run on those intermediate tyres. Still the correct tyre to be on at the moment. There's still not enough standing water for those wet tyres. So the intermediate is the fastest tyre to be on at the moment. So yeah, we'll have to see what he can do. He's in P6 at the moment. He's obviously well within range to get into Q3 in P6. So we'll have to see whether he can improve even more.
The person who is probably the bookies' favourite to come on the top step of the podium, well, at least for qualifying today, is Max Chapman. So go ahead, please, Sam, and talk us through his lap.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, incredibly fast qualifier as he approaches turn 3, turn 4. That very tricky corner as he does tap the wall slightly. I don't know if that's invalidated. That doesn't look like he has coming up towards turn 6, that very tricky corner. You can use that curb on the left, but it does get very saturated with water. You're going to get as close to the wall as possible there. He doesn't go too aggressive, obviously, coming through turn 4. He did tap the wall slightly, so that may be putting him off slightly as he approaches turn 8 and 9. Pretty easy corners. Oh, and he nearly loses it, but he catches it. He's probably lost a lot of time as he approaches turn 10. That tricky hairpin, going to be going very slow through it. It's painfully slow in a Formula 1 car. As we come on to that back straight, that is got two corners on it, if you would believe it. Turn 11 and turn 12. Very, very slight corners. So you do not notice them in the F1 car as he approaches potentially the trickiest chicane on the track, turn 13, 14, followed by the Wall of Champions. He uses a nice amount of curb there. Not too close to the Wall of Champions as he powers towards that start-finish line, and he stays in P4. I do think that massive step of oversteer coming out of turn 9 lost him a lot of time.
Yeah, well, the oversteer was the least of his concerns because, yeah, when he lost his rear, his tyre was half a metre from the wall, I'd probably say, so he was lucky there not to hit the wall, and he was the loss of time definitely was outweighed by the saviour of the car, and that is evident through his fastest Sector 1, which is currently just set, so if he had hit the wall there, he wouldn't have been able to save the car, and he would not be able to set this lap.
No, definitely. Very good point. Now, I was watching his onboard, so I didn't quite see how close the rear tyre was to this wall right here, coming off of turn 9. But as you said, he's got his fastest first sector as we approach the Sector 2 line. Will it be a fastest sector as well? We'll have to see. And it does look like it is, so really good stuff for him. Looks like a very, very strong lap. He's up by about 4/10, which is really good stuff. So that will propel him to P1 at the moment as he approaches, again, that turn 13, 14 chicane. He did it very, very well on his previous lap. And just hopefully he won't fall victim to that Wall of Champions, but he's a very calm and collected driver. So he's made it through there very, very nicely. And once again, heading towards that start-finish line, he goes P1.
And, yeah, you were talking about how quick that middle sector was. His previous middle sector was about 1:28, and he managed to claw 6.5 tenths through there. And his middle sector now, I said a 1:28, just a 28 seconds, obviously. 28, yes, it's about a 28 flat, and his current fastest Sector 2 is a 27.3, so just shows the absolute pace of Max Chapman, especially when he is on form.
Yeah, really good stuff from the Alfa Romeo driver. As we said earlier, I mean, an incredible qualifier is Max Chapman, so he's getting used to that P1 slot.
Yeah, and we talked about the driver transfers earlier. Could he be someone that the other teams are willing to poach? Obviously, Alfa Romeo, obviously currently top in the Constructors' Championship, but other teams like the likes of Red Bull or Mercedes may be looking to snap him up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Max is very much a team play. He's gonna want to stick out this contract with Alfa Romeo, no doubt. Obviously, all the other teams in the grid will want a driver like Max Chapman. He's incredibly fast in qualifying and an incredibly great racer. Yeah, I'm sure he'll want to stay at Alfa Romeo, even if his teammates accuse him of not being a team player, which I'm sure he is.
We'll definitely go ahead and talk to that, but sounds like a little bit of beef there between the Alfa Romeo. I mean, how much beef is allowed? How much rivalry is acceptable before it becomes hostile?
Well, I mean, obviously, if a team becomes very toxic between its driver lineup, it's not going to be performing at its peak. Obviously, I think something that sticks in my mind is when Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton were teammates at Mercedes. It wasn't the environment that Mercedes was now. The two teammates were very they liked to fight each other a lot, and they were very, very aggressive with each other. Obviously, that 2016 accident in Spain comes to mind when I think of that stint with Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. But I think it's just friendly banter between Casamich and Max Chapman because he said he doesn't give him pole. So maybe they need to work on that with each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as simple as it seems here in Formula One. And Casper Meech, he needs to improve his time by 5 cents in order to go pole in this session. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything currently if you're not in the top 10, but 3 of the drivers who've passed the line, P11, P12, P13, cannot improve and so will stay in qualifying 2.
Yes, whilst we were talking about the Alfa Romeo boys, unfortunately, Matt Wilson, Joel Foxall, Archie Modifel have set their final lap of the session, and they will not be getting into Q3 today, as well as Ben Mitchell and Adam Forbes.
Yeah, so once again, interesting stuff here in the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, here in Montreal, and we'll just have to see what happens as the final 10 progress on to qualifying 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final session today in the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, and almost in sync, the Ferrari cars and one of the Red Bull cars comes out of that garage to set possibly the pole lap for today. We have seen the Red Bull come so close to that pole position. We've seen one of the Ferraris actually come on pole position, but not be able to convert it into the win that they so evidently wanted and sort of needed here in the Constructors' Championship, as they're just so far behind. But the drivers out on track currently consist of the Alfa Romeos. Down in P8, we've got the Williams of Andre. We've also got the Red Bulls. Both the Red Bulls are out on track. Oh, sorry, one of the Red Bulls is out on track. The other one has just come out the garage, we do see there. And the Ferraris are also out on track. And one other person coming out on track is Ian Hanmore on his outlap. So we see him down in P5. And how can he convert possibly a good qualifying session for him today? Obviously, minimum position today for him, P10. How could he convert that into a race strategy tomorrow?
Yeah, really, really impressive stuff from Hanmore. Obviously, to get into Q3. Really good stuff. Obviously, the lone Mercedes in Q3 today, Ben Mitchell, missing out just so close in that Q2 session. But yeah, Hanmore P5 at the moment. Obviously, not set a lap time yet. But it's all dependent on the weather conditions in the race, I think, and that will really choose what strategy these guys decide to go on. I am hearing that it's a dry race. Um, how long for it will be dry, I'm not too sure, but I think it will be a dry race. So it'll either be that soft or medium tire they'll start on, no doubt, unless it goes for a very different strategy, starting on that hard tire, which could pay off.
And the hard tyre, how will that affect around a track like this, where it is predominantly quick and straight turns rather than long, extended, medium length?
Well, the hard tires probably will last for a very decent amount of time for these guys. So starting on the hard tire could actually be a very good strategy. Obviously, doing the majority of the race on that hard tire, and then final 10 laps or so going onto that soft tire, going for that fastest lap, potentially, obviously getting that extra championship point for for getting that fastest lap if you are within the top 10. So there's so many options open for these guys, and Max Chapman with a 1:18.9. That sort of speaks for itself, really.
Yeah,
That is.
and sorry about the delay. I was getting a word in from the Williams garage, and they say that their driver feels like he's in the tip-top condition today to be in the top flights, and both Casper Meach and Casper Knopp setting the time at the same time on the lap, and P3, P4 is for them.
Yeah, obviously the Williams boys, as you just said, saying that Andre Bro is in very good condition today. Obviously, we've seen that with him in those wet conditions, he seems to shine, but he's got about 5 tenths to make up on Max Chapman. Just under 5 tenths is quite a big around such a short track.
Wow, we do see drivers just improve so much more on their second and third laps compared to the first. Nothing to do with track evolution, but finding out which limits they can push and where they can gain the time. And someone who has found out the limit on this lap is Ian Hanmore, number 34, coming through champions there. We see him very gingerly through the last couple corners, and he invalidated his lap of a 1:23.1.
Yeah, it's a shame for him, but a 1:23.1 would have been miles off. He's obviously backing off quite a lot in that after he invalidated, but he's going to go again. He'll get that second run in on those intermediate tyres, no doubt. And we'll have to see what he can do. Hopefully he won't invalidate again. Hopefully he will have learned from his mistake, which is one of the most important things in Formula One.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really interesting, and we are just looking at Hanmore and the pace that he wants to need, good English, Cal, that he needs to have through the middle sector in order to be higher than he is right now.
Yeah, definitely. He's obviously got that faster sector one, which is really good to see, and he's got that faster sector two, so that's really good stuff. He just needs to stick it within the white lines. Don't invalidate the lap. I'm not too sure where he invalidated it last time, but we'll have to see as he goes on that back straight, approaching that turn 30, 40 chicane. Very, very easy to invalidate the lap going over that curb too much. We saw Max Chapman demonstrating perfectly the perfect amount of curb you can take. Can Hanmore do it as well? Not as much curb as Chapman. He could have gone a bit more aggressive there, obviously getting closer to that wall, getting more speed, but coming towards the line, he will go P10. He'll stay P10 with a 1:23. That's not too bad for the Mercedes driver.
Someone we saw pushing the final couple corners was the Racing Point of Joel Foxhall, and here are a few words from the Foxhall garage about the qualifying session.
Sorry guys, I was not expecting to be out for 3 laps. I had to stick in lean for that last lap, so guys, that's just out of fuel.
Really unfortunate, out of fuel, he says, and would that have been the difference between a position in the top 10 or one in the top 15?
Yeah, that's a shame for the Racing Point driver. Obviously, one of the Racing Point drivers aren't qualifying today. We'll see them in the race, hopefully. But yeah, a real shame for Foxhall. Obviously, I would say this would be the time. I would say that starting outside of that P10, you get that free tyre choice. But every single driver will get that free tyre choice on Sunday. So it is a real shame to not have that track position from the outset on Sunday.
It's really quite beautiful that we see P1 is on an outlap, we see P3 is on an outlap, we see P5 is on an outlap, we see P7 is on an outlap, and P9, each one of the odd drivers on an outlap, and that's just quite impressive there. But just a few tenths that he needed to gain in order to be up in the top flight.
Yeah, real shame, as we said earlier. But Joel is a very, very strong driver. He'll come back in the race, no doubt. He's not too far down. He's very close to those points position.
And there's a lot of space between the drivers, and one of the drivers who needs space today is Casper Knopp, and he is coming down. We saw, he was P1 in Monaco, P1 in Azerbaijan, and both times it was taken away from him in the first lap.
Yeah, he has been so close to getting those 2 poles positions, as you mentioned earlier, Monaco and Baku, so close to that pole sitter. But the most impressive thing was that within the first or second con, he's managed to get into that P1 position, both in Monaco and Baku. But yeah, as you said, he lost it in both of those races, which is a real shame. Casper Knopp is going to be kicking himself, no doubt. He was so close to getting wins in both of those races.
And he's going to want to be in at least the top 2 here and outgun the Williams for P2.
Yeah, definitely. He is a very, very strong driver, as I said. So close in those qualifying sessions previously. So he's got that pace, no doubt, today. He'll want to get within Max Chapman's incredible 1:18.9 at the moment. But obviously, the wet conditions are going to prove difficult for all of these drivers.
Yeah, and I mean, just how important is it that the drivers get a good lap? Because we know we don't want the drivers having to get set back-to-back laps.
No, definitely not. Obviously, you want to have the tyres in the optimum condition, so you get the most time out of them. But Casper Knopp gets very, very close to hitting out Wall of Champions. Got a massive snap up oversteers. He approaches the line, stays P5 with a 1:19.7. not the best lap.
1:19.7 P5. But we did see Max Chapman set a bad lap and then go pole, so it's definitely doable. But the track is very, very much changing. Oh, and Casper Knopp has invalidated, but he should have time for another lap. Behind him, Mr. Williams. He's going to try and break that toe by sticking as wide as he can, but invalidating through turn 3 and 4 is the third time we've seen that from a driver today.
Yeah, that's a shame. But as you said, he's got enough time to get round the lap again. Obviously, we saw Josh O'Mara get round in about a minute, which is impressive stuff. So he'll have enough time to get that another lap in. I think that'll be his third lap. Opportunity to have to see whether that pays off.
Yeah, and for in terms of paying off for the Red Bull driver, I mean, it's interesting that he's backing out, because I don't know how much. Oh, and there's a big. Oh no, he's just dropped the throttle too much there through the exit of turn 10, and unfortunately well, I don't think he's going to set a better time with half a wing.
No, that will be potentially his qualifying session over. He's going to have to pit, obviously get a fresh front wing, go into the garage. It's going to be a very big ask within 1.5 minutes. So yeah, I think that is it for Casper Knopp today in P7 at the moment. So yeah, another real shame for Casper Knopp.
And yeah, into the pits he goes, and that'll be the end of his qualifying stint here today. But someone who doesn't think it's the end of their qualifying stint is the man in P6. Oh, but he's coming in also, so that might also be the end of his qualifying stint. In P10, Ian Hanmore is going to set his validated lap. He's gone slower in the middle sector, and he has improved, but not enough. He's still P10, so he has this one final lap to set it. He's about 1.3 behind the driver in front, or sorry, 1.3 from pole, and yeah, about 3/10 from the driver in front.
Yeah, a good run from Hanmore, obviously P10. Still really good within those points positions from the outset, which is very, very good for him. So yeah, a good run with a 120.3, about 1.3 seconds off the current provisional pole time.
And yeah, Chapman in provisional pole, only 5 thousandths behind for Casper Meech in P2. So that shows the absolute inclusiveness that this track has. And Hanmore has lost it there through the turn 8 and 9 chicane complex. He's going to get in the wing. There's debris all over the track. Oh no, Ian, what have you done?
Yeah, that's a shame for Ian, obviously coming in on his in lap, coming towards the garage. He will not be setting another time, quite obviously. But Casper Meech, as he said, he's got within 5 thousandths of his teammate. So 5 thousandths is nothing. He's going to be kicking himself with that. He was so close to getting that pole position today. But we'll have to see what Andre Abreu can do, obviously. Looking very, very strong in the early sessions, and he's actually invalidated his lap. So there'll be nothing more from him today.
Torben Schutt is about 481 behind. He's not going to be able to set a lap. His teammate has invalidated also. So he's not going to be able to set a lap. P6, Thomas Salomon, does he have what it takes? Down the back straight. He's gone slower in the first sector, faster in the second sector, but he's going to be kicking himself because he's not going to be able to do it, and he is going to still come through the final chicane. It's a really nice exit there. Not touching any of the exit curve, but managing to get a really nice and quick exit. He's only going to put himself in P6, so that looks like that will be today's grid.
Yeah, some very, very close times today. Obviously, most notably that of the two Alfa Romeo boys, with Casper Meech coming in with this final lap time of 1:18.958, as opposed to Max Chapman with a 1:18.953, and he will be our pole sitter for today.
If we just go rewatch the incident that happened there with Ian Hanmore, he comes through the turn 8 and 9 complex, and he just drops the throttle as his rear lifts, and yeah, that's a shame there, especially with him losing all of the front wing portion. That could have been him into the top flights.
Yeah, that is a shame for him. But that is damage they can easily fix, hopefully, and they'll just replace that front wing for the race. And no doubt we'll be seeing some greater stuff from Ian Hanmore in the race.
Yeah, and Ian will be just on the cusp, and Well, it would have been really unlucky if there was tyre choice because he would have been only one position close and he wouldn't have had the tyre choice. But your running order is Max, who sits on pole position again, and for the second time, Casper in P2. Welcome to the commentary box, Casper. Oh, it's so close, mate. 5 thousandths in the end.
I'm absolutely devastated. I'd say that's probably one of my only chances to get pole this year. I felt really confident in the wet. I know Max had a bit more wet practice than me, so I guess that's a bit of encouragement. But I kind of messed up my first corner exit a little bit, and if I'd have just got on that power a tad earlier, who knows what could have been.
Yeah, I mean, you're only 9 points behind him in the standings, and if you were to finish as you were with one of you taking the fastest lap, let's say you took the fastest lap, it would be a difference of about 7-6 with the fastest lap, so 6 points difference. So you would gain, you would lose. Well, you're 9 points behind. You would be down to 12. So you really need to win this race to get on top of your teammate, don't you?
Yeah, it's the battle between their teammates isn't as important to me as to other people. Perhaps I kind of want to win that constructors championship really bad. As long as I beat some of my rivals, like Robbie, for example, in the Renault, then that's a good season for me. We know Max has got that outright pace, which I don't. I just don't have that consistency every week. So there's a bit of a difference between us, and yeah, I don't mind losing out to him in the end if it means we get the constructors championship.
And I don't know if you've heard, but there is a little bit of talk here in the paddock about maybe some driver transfers that are going to happen mid-season. Obviously, the summer break was due to happen yesterday, but it's not the summer. But you know what I mean in terms of the actual F1 calendar. But we move and the driver transfers that could be happening. How do you feel that could affect your team or possibly your rivals?
You know, I don't think we feel too threatened. There's obviously some very strong driver pairings, like with the likes of Charlie and Grizzler. I definitely put them on the same level as me and Max. But it just comes down to that consistency every week. And although me and Max haven't had it every week, we've had it more than a couple of the other teams. So I don't think it should affect us too much. We just want to focus on ourselves and see what we can do, rather than focusing on what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and how do you feel this race is going to go for you personally?
I just want it to be a nice, clean race. I don't want to get taken out even before turn one again. That would suck, but I need to capitalize on this P2. And if I can get ahead of Max, that's great. If not, P2 is also an excellent result for fighting people like Joel and Robbie in the championship. So, yeah, I just need to be consistent, be on it, and get P1, if not P2.
Last week you came back by 16 positions, 1-6, and how is that going to affect your race for coming into Canada? Do you feel like you're on top form, or do you think that took everything out of you?
No, I'd say I'm on good form. I've focused a lot on Canada this week. I feel more calm and collected when I'm starting last, and then to make up those 16 positions, that was just the result of me being very calm about it. But it's a much more high pressure situation when you're starting on the front row, so we need to see how that goes.
Some of you got anything to ask?
No, just best of luck for Sunday, and I would like to see a good battle between you and Matt.
Yeah, we'll try get that without hitting each other, shall we?
Yeah.
No multi 2-1 with us.
Well, I'm sure you'll do fine. So, good luck to you, and best of luck for tomorrow. Oh,
Thanks,
Sunday.
guys.
Sorry, it's not tomorrow, but Sunday.
Thanks, guys.
So close for the midfield, and someone in the midfield who we've been talking to quite a lot recently, as we've mentioned him quite a few times this session, and Dylan Hartley, possibly the man who could propel himself. You're middle of the midfield there, Dylan, up in P7, I believe you finished in, and
Yeah.
and how is that going to affect your race? Last week you started in a similar position and ended up going P2. So
Yeah, P7 is well good enough for me. I wasn't even expecting to get into Q3 due to it being wet. Didn't plan for that. So hopefully P7 it will be like last race, and hopefully I have just an amazing race. To be honest, hopefully the strategy works out, and that's all I can hope for at the moment.
yeah, I mean, you're definitely one of the most up and coming drivers. You've won one. You've come second last race. Naturally, the progression for you today is P3.
Well, that's what I would obviously love again, another podium, but obviously don't want to get my hopes up too high yet. But that's I'm going to try aim for P3 this race on Sunday. So hopefully my strategy that I have chosen works.
Yeah. So, how? I mean, you've said your strategy works. What is, if you can tell us, what is your strategy for this weekend?
Not going to say.
Not gonna say. Is it? Could you give us a hint? Is it any of the harder compounds, or are you looking to start? Obviously, you've got the free tire choice. So are you looking to go on softer or harder compounds?
Probably for the start, I'm probably looking softer,
That's smart.
but I'm not saying anymore.
Well, we hope we hope you decide on your strategy by tomorrow, and I keep saying tomorrow, by Sunday, and yeah, we'll definitely hope to see you soon again on the top step of the podium. Have you got anything to add to that, Sam?
No, I was going to ask you about the strategy, but I don't think I'll bother. But yeah, best of luck for Sunday.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Your pole sitter once again is Max Chapman, and today we're gonna have to say bye because, well, we're gonna have to go sleep because I'm not gonna be sleeping tomorrow with the excitement that's coming, knowing that tomorrow will be the Jules Villeneuve Grand Prix in Canada, and yeah, from myself and from Sam. See you later, guys.